Yeah, squish it. Wild. 1887 Browning shotgun. 1893 Browning shotgun. But wait, Model 12 Browning shotgun. No, this is a shotgun that Browning did for Winchester. This is a shotgun that Browning did for Winchester. And this is a shotgun that a gentleman by the name of Thomas Crossley did for Winchester. Yet if you look really hard at the Model 12, there's one laid out right here, they're basically the same gun. We're going to go ahead and conserve a Model 12 for C&R Arsenal for part of their upcoming series on shotguns, just because it's a great old Model 12. Let's take a look at it, describe how it works. The rabbit hole isn't very deep today, but I think you'll find it interesting anyway. Let's go. I'm going for a point here by showing you this, which is the difference in color between this receiver. It's kind of a late 50s Model 12 here that's been hot dipped. This kind of purplish, plumish brown, this is the C&R Arsenal gun we're going to do. And this is a nice uniform coating of rust all over it. And I mean, the rust is kind of deep. You can hear the pencil scratch on it. And this is what one looks like in the middle of being re-blued when you're applying the rusting chemicals, letting them rust. This is just rusting up right now. Eventually it'll go into the conversion pot and get done. So what we're going to try to do is make this particular unit kind of look like this one, but without all the late 50s, early 60s glitzy hot dip blue kitsch. So let me get this out of here. Something else to discuss. In this particular case, if you get up in here and take a look, you can see how nice and shiny the barrel extension is, whereas this is all brown. The gun used to look like that when it was brand new, and we're going to try to get back to that without wire wheeling or doing anything really gross to this thing. So we've got this thing laid out on the tray like we saw during the intro. And this is the refurb part of this. I'm just going to see if there's anything grossly wrong with it. There's a couple of things I've identified. There's a screw here that holds the firing pin interlock in. That screw, it's free to turn, but there's like some mung on the other side. So let's say we're pulling it out of a hole, we unthread it, we come up, and the green stuff's all the mung, and I can't bring it through. So we're going to conserve this screw together and then attempt to take it apart. The fire control group, I can go further apart than this, but I'm choosing not to. I don't want to take it much further apart than it already is, because there's a lot of staked screws in here. There's a lot of things that have dimpled heads, or the screws are physically staked in place, and I don't really need to go that far down into this, so that's not broken. I look at the wood to make sure we don't have any cracks in the wood. And we don't. There's an A5 that's going to go through here that's got a lot of cracks in it. Stock looks okay. There's nothing really grossly wrong here with the stock. There's some writing in the stock back here, and sometimes, especially on older guns from probably the 1800s, you got to be careful because that writing means something to somebody probably. And if you get into a gun that's got something written on it, you ask the customer before you just take out the writing. Other than that, it's a parts complete piece of kit. It's filthy, so I'm going to go ahead and load most of the major sub-assemblies here into a basket, and we'll just cook all this stuff for about 30 to 45 minutes at a throw. And we're also going to redo this other butt plate. We're going to throw that back in there. There's a story behind that gun. We'll talk about that later. We put all the big stuff in here. Let's see, anything else? Yeah, that stuff that can't be cleaned or has nooks and crannies. The small stuff goes into T-balls. We've covered all this in a variety of previous anvils. So we just load everything in this T-ball, and when we're all done, we close her up, and we get on back to the conversion pots. Okay, we're boiling in my new pot called Thor. Thor is an interesting piece of kit. I needed something a little bit bigger. And yet, operationally, Thor is no different than the gutter that we used in a previous episode. Thor is just larger, pulls dramatically more amps, and allows me to do multiple projects at once. This is a piece of kit I've needed for a long time, and I'm glad I've built it. And of course, now we have the fire control group also boiling out. I built this room because I needed to get a move on about getting some of this stuff done, and it has been very effective. This wood, we'll play here to the monitor. You can see it's flat right here. There's the finish has been taken right off the outside of it. It's shiny up over the top, shiny on the bottom, but it has flat spots in it. So one of the things I try to do with this wood, you can either do this with kerosene, or I'm going to do this with a Danish oil. 4/0 steel wool, and it's just a very light rubbing. You're not trying to remove the finish. What you're trying to do is feather the edges between the dull spots and the bright spots. Okay, you don't want to knock the bright off. All we're doing here is feathering this finish around the corner and just making the edges not quite so heinous. So we can see here, let me see if I can get you this edge right there. So you see how this light streak comes around the corner and it disappears. There's a line right here between where it's shiny and where it's fake. So what we're trying to do now is just dissolve that line. I'm not pressing very hard. I'm just dissolving that line. Bang, that line's gone. Because when we're all done, we're going to put a little bit of oil on this. It's a Watco Danish oil. I once described this as a proprietary blend of turpentines and tree oils and ground up nuts, and it's actually all of that. And the guy I was describing it to was feverishly taking notes, and you know, I was divulging to him the secrets of the world. And yet I would have to tell you that one of my furniture guys told me about this stuff. I'm going to tell you what, that right there is the bee's knees. Get it in dark walnut, you can use it, but just give it a little shake here. Now you have to put it on an antiseptically clean applicator, and make sure you never get it on your hands, because God forbid we wouldn't want to do that, now would we? So we're just rubbing this stuff in, and we're letting it set. And the instructions for this stuff is to just let it sit here for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. We could keep going, but I don't want it to look like I put it on. So what I'm doing is I'm just massaging this in and bringing those flat spots up just a little bit. This gun is probably pushing 100 years old, and I'm not here to say that. So we've rubbed that all in now, and now that sheen is the same all the way around the corner. The flat spots have disappeared. Now, when we get off camera, I'm going to go back and rough this up again and make it look better. However, for right now, you're kind of getting the point I'm trying to make here, is you don't have to really kill these things to make them look good. do the maintenance, you know. Now, finishes you can't do this to. Any of that browning stuff, any epoxy polyamide, you can make this stock look like it's under about 1/4 of an inch of water. And a lot of those English guys can do that because they're being paid to put 20, 25, 30 coats of this stuff on. And their stuff is gorgeous, but that's not what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to stop an old gun from decaying and put it back out in the field where it's going to be shot for another generation. We're not trying to make some sort of statement of wealth here. I'll do it if you pay me to do it, but I haven't had someone pay me to put a London oil finish on a Model 12 yet, and I got a funny feeling it ain't gonna happen anytime soon. Fore end, same deal. The fore end had kind of a hard life here, and we're just trying to even it up. Hey, when we were editing here, we just stopped, and I decided to put this fore end piece in here just to show you. When we were editing, we discovered that when we had the camera hung overhead looking down, I have a fan running in the shop here, and that fan's sitting up on top of the bench. And the fan, of course, the blades are not in perfect balance. The fan was acting as an input to an oscillator where you had the mass of the camera hanging from the mount, and the fan was causing it to then interact with the frame rate on the camera, and it made the image float. So we put a filter on that, and you may notice that it jumped a little bit, but now that we know it, we'll make sure we won't do it again. Once again, you got to use that completely antiseptic applicator, and dear sweet God, don't get any of these chemicals on your hands. Just small engine oil. It doesn't have any detergent in it. It's like $3 or $4 you can get a jug of this. The reason why I like it is because I've just spent all this time messing around with the rust on this gun, and I don't want something that's going to take the rust off. So what am I going to show you here? I've been asked how to get, when you go to card, how to get all the stuff off the inside, and well, toothbrush, Mark 1, Mod 0, 1 each. And just toothbrush in a liberal coating of oil. We do this on all the parts. And then we'll let the oil sit here for a little bit. Now, I did not kerosene these because you're getting to watch this conservation happen in almost real time. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I kind of want to get this done, and it didn't need the big parts. I sent the big parts back around again while we were doing the wood, and I did that on purpose because I wanted these to convert a little bit more, and because of that I gave up my kerosene time. You don't have to soak stuff in kerosene. I just find that it sets finishes, and in this particular case I'm not using any chemicals, so I had nothing to set. So anyway, just a little bit of non-detergent oil. You can use anything you got. Old motor oil works really well also, because all you're going to do is wipe it all off anyway. So here's the fire control group. You're going, well, we didn't disassemble the fire control group, did we? Not really. We're just going to rub a whole bunch of oil down into this, and I'm going to show you a really scientific way to determine exactly how much oil you should have in this fire control group. Now, if you're in very cold climates, this 30-weight motor oil would not be a very good idea to leave in here. It would turn into a gelatinous goo. But hang on a second here. Let's drop the, let's get the safety off and drop the hammer down so we can get in behind it. So here's a real high-tech way for determining how much oil should be left. Whatever's left behind after that looks about like the right amount of oil to me. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. So really, this brings us to the question of what is refurbishment and what is conservation. Conservation is stopping anything from dying from the elements in its interaction with the oxygen in the air and the dirt in the ground. Refurbishment is restoring mechanical condition. So this gun, for instance, We knew it was all here, and it ran. It was just scroty, but it was parts complete. So I knew I didn't have a tremendous amount of refurb to do here, and I dove straight into the full conservation, tore it all the way apart, and went for it. Sometimes, like that Model 93 you saw in the beginning, there's a reason why I'm not doing the Model 93 concurrent with this gun, is because I got no idea what's down in there. We don't even know if it works, and the engineering on the gun was a little sketchy to start with, because they didn't learn what you needed to know about it. So that particular gun will probably get all the way conserved, and then I know fully well I got to put it all the way back together again and then find out what's wrong with it and then take it all the way back apart and finish the conservation. You're going to take a gun like this apart 2 or 3 times, beginning gunsmiths. You're going to be in and out of it. Just know that. You're going to be in and out of these things a couple of times in order to get it clean enough to even get to the point where you can tell what's wrong with it, and then you start fixing all of the problems, and the problem goes away. So this one was pretty straightforward. We had identified a few problems. This screw right here, I'm going to tell you what, I ground away at that, thinking that it was the head catching up in here. This screw does not want to come out of this hole, and it does not have a corresponding hole on the other side. And I'm going to tell you what, that screw went in, and it's working, and I'm not going to fight it in this case. If I had to get it out, it would be a little dicey, and it would involve spot welding a pin on this right there and then pulling it that way, and then we'd have to make a new screw, and I don't need to go that far. But while we're sitting there, the bolt locks into a recess in the back of the receiver. The recess is shown down here in the bottom of this pit. Right there, you can see it right there. There's a ledge right there. So when the bolt, there it is, there's a ledge right there. And when the bolt drops in, it pushes up against the top of the receiver housing. When it does that, this tab is pushed down as the bolt drops in, and that allows the firing pin access to the cartridge. But if the bolt is not completely in battery, if this is not all the way up, the firing pin is locked. This is the out of battery interlock that keeps the gun from going off unless the bolt comes all the way in. What I've seen happen on these Model 12s is this surface right here will get kind of rounded over because there's mung up in here. There's enough Glock up in this thing that it keeps this from going all the way up. And now all of a sudden we start getting misfires because the gun is protecting itself. Something to remember. And if it batters that ledge inside the receiver, oh boy, then you got to really start thinking about it. The other things that we had taken out was an extractor on this side and an extractor on this side. Pretty basic stuff. You can get fancy and you can paint the line right there on the safety red. You can paint that red. You can do a lot of stuff if you want to. Not really necessary. I didn't see anything going on here in the fire control group. Nothing on the lifter. This gun is a battleship. These things are pretty hard to kill, although I've seen some motivated individuals try their damnedest. I might go after this crack in the butt plate. I may not. We'll take a look when we put it back up on the gun. Nothing big there. That, believe it or not, on this, they're either rubber or gutta-percha pads. On this particular case, a little touch of super glue and some sandpaper will give you a not half bad repair. And this brings me to the most misunderstood part of a Model 12. It's the interrupted threads. These interrupted threads, this is a sleeve that rotates around the inside of the barrel, and it depends on where this locking tooth is right here. I've removed the screw from this hole and brought this piece back out. This slides up into those teeth right there. So when this is slid out of engagement, let me see here, I gotta stay in shot. When this is slid out of engagement, this ring can rotate. And in fact, this ring can rotate enough, it can be taken all the way off the gun if you're that motivated, and I'm not. But it can be screwed all the way, let me see here, I gotta get back to there, that's where it should be, right there. it can be screwed all the way off the gun. Guys, I'm working in a monitor at 90-degree angles, so just give me a catch me a break here. Anyway, that's pushed in, and then the screws run down in that hole to lock it. Now, this outer shroud can also be threaded off the rear end of this barrel. And if you really want to do that, you get a hold of me and I'll talk you through it. But this requires an 8-foot breaker bar, a shitload of heat, and a lot of patience. I don't recommend it. However, this adjustment sets the timing on this interrupted thread. The interrupted thread plugs into this hole, and you can see this thread's up in the top up here. So what we're going to do is this adjustment sets where the barrel gets tight when you put the gun back together again. So this will come in this way and other way, sorry. That'll come in that way, and that will thread down. Which way I got to move? There we go. That'll thread down onto that and bang, and that'll get tight. Now in this case, I moved it, and it goes past center till it gets tight. So what we'll do is we'll advance that ring in 1 or 2 teeth until the gun tightens up right there. And that's how this and this stay tight as the gun wears. Now I've seen some of these things so damn worn that they're so out of adjustment, we've actually had to go all the way around one turn. Not in the scope of this video. Why won't this cartridge fit the rest of the way down inside this gun? It won't go all the way in. Because the rim doesn't touch off on a Model 12. The rim touches off inside here. This is a head spacing ring, and there's a screw there and a screw over here. And you take those two out, and this head spacing ring actually comes out of the gun. And the intention is, let me get this set up in here. The rim actually sits down on that head spacing ring inside there, and that's how you set headspace on this gun, not with the barrel. And that's why you can have that rather loosey-goosey arrangement in there. Right about now, Bruno is showing you before and after, before and after, before, after. At some point in time, someone's going to have to tell me when a lack of maintenance turns into patina. And I'm going to tell you, I've been asking that question now for a long time. That color that everybody loves, that color is actually oily rust. And rust continues to happen underneath while it's oily. Here's the real issue with true patina. You let that dry out and that thing will rust and bloom. And if it happens to happen inside of a closet, you're done. So sooner or later, you've got to do the maintenance. Your mill syrups. This particular mill syrup, it had been cold blued. And I'm telling you, underneath this bluing, there are pits that are deep enough to get the point of this pencil in. Same thing on a jacket. That's just going to get repainted. I now know why the thing was painted. There's no way. This thing had probably been left out in the rain forever. So we get mill syrups that have been left out in the rain that have to be maintained. We get fairly nice looking Model 12s, and I got to tell you what, that came out pretty good. Now this high polish hot dip blue, you're not going to get there with a rust blue, but I will tell you what, you can make this come off very easy. This stuff is in the steel and it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to beg again, do the maintenance. The Encyclopedia of Modern Firearms. This was put together by Mr. Brownell back in 1959, and if you're a walnut and steel gun guy, this is something you need. You can tell I've been using it for a while because I got tape on the edge of the pages. This is my brains. I've got a lot of books, and I don't claim to know exactly how everything goes together. This comes as a bound book. This thing comes bound. Somebody gave me one. But I collect information, not books. So in this particular case, this book has got a lot of really cool stuff in it. And all the military shotguns and all of the military is in here. And look at that. There's an entire drawing of how the front end of this gun's put together. I've been asked a couple of times to take photocopies of pages of this book, and I'm not going to do that. You're going to go ahead and buy yours because it's It's a copyright kind of deal. But the beauty of this book is there are, in this particular case for the Model 12, there's page 15. And I got to tell you, there's another couple of pages here that I got pulled out because I'm going to admit to you that putting the front end of this thing together has kicked my butt more times than I want to tell you. So just know that I got the Cliff Notes version of it going over on one side. So there's a couple of things you got to know here about this particular tube. This assembly notch right here. This is how you know which end is up. There's a stop, and I'm trying to get it highlighted here for you. Where is it? Right there. There's a stop right there. There it is. It's shiny. That stop is your vertical reference for all of the reassembly of this. There's an interrupted thread that will go in, and then when you rotate the magazine tube, that locks it in. Rotate a half a turn and it comes out. There are some other things on this tube that are really nice to know about. There's an arrow right here. Again, very hard to see. I'm going to try to, I'm not going to let, you're not going to be able to see that. But there's an arrow right here that lines up with a corresponding arrow on the receiver. There's an arrow there and there's an arrow there. Yeah, something like that. When those line up, and you know that this is locked into the receiver. So just remember about those arrows, and we'll come back to that here in a moment. So first thing we got to do is put this spring on. Now this spring, when you shove the slide all the way forward, this big hateful spring right here is what gives you a little bit of give. And again, it's real hard for me to show you that. There it is. So this spring right here is what allows the forend. Here's the forend part, right? Okay, there's a nubbins right here. There's a nub right there where that pencil is. And there's another nub on the other side right there. Those two nubs are important because if you attempt to rotate this wood, let's see if we can if I can get a light down on it here. Here we go. Right. There's a slot cut in this forend right here. Well, it ain't photographing worth a damn. There's a slot there, and there's a slot there that correspond to those slots right there in the forend. So this thing is actually keyed. It'll spin until it locks up on those. If you spin this forend, you will destroy the back end of this. I really recommend you don't do that. That bad boy goes up on there. And you can see there's some give here. There's some give. So when you're shucking and jiving this thing and you run this slide all the way forward, it's nice to know that there's a little bit of give there. We're going to need this wrench here. This wrench engages in this forend cap and allows us to rotate this without destroying stuff. You don't have to have it. Yeah, you do. You know better. Real fine threads on this. We'll go ahead and get this locked in here. We don't want to force anything here. If you've got to force this, something's wrong or the end of the tube has been marred up. There we go. Hang on. And keep cross-threading it. There it is. It should go on nice and easy, you see. That should spin on nice and easy. And then as you start drawing up, now we know we got that one last half a turn. We lay this funky wrench down in there and we just drag it up. So you see how that notch is lining up right there? Well, it's too easy. We got to go around another turn. Here we go. Now we're dragging up. So we line up until that notch lines up. You don't have to gorilla this thing. You don't have to kill it. So now we've got the forend in a place that as we push forward, we've got a little bit of give here. All right. The alignment key on the front end of this is that nub I was telling you about. So now you have a large hole through here. And where are we at? Here's the large hole. So the large hole is lined up here, and then as the gun goes in, it's going to turn a quarter of a turn that way, and then everything's going to line up on the bottom. You just got to trust me on this one. It will. So you line the arrows up, and then you know that that's locked. So unlocked is a quarter of a turn away. So now you know you've got this end of the tube in the unlocked position. Okay, here comes one of the tricky parts. It's trying to figure out where all this claptrap goes. Wow, lots of parts here, huh? So as this rotates, this clip is going to sit down on this thing, and it's going to allow us to rotate it that way to unlock it and that way to lock it. And I don't know how else to show you this. There's just a lot going on here. And I am going to tell you, I'm cheating, and I'm looking at the books. Okay, this is the clamp that's going to hold the end of the magazine on. This is a piece that we insert in the clamp that allows us to thread screws in it and allows 15 things to happen at once. So we insert so that the round part is down. We come over the end of the barrel. We slide this up. We grab over the top. And there's no other way to show this but to just do it. There we go. You just got to spread that out just enough to get over the top here. Where are we here? Nope. Here it is. Okay, so I've just learned something. In order to make that go, you lift up on this clamp, and when you lift up on it, the legs spread apart and it drops right over the top, bang, onto there. So again, if we lost where we were rotationally, we line the arrows up, we come back a quarter of a turn, and again, we're looking in the right spot. This spring pushes down on the magazine tube and keeps it from rattling. So this should be up underneath. And we'll pop that bad boy in. It might have been easier to have put this in the first place, but hey, maybe I'll get lucky and not scratch the heck out of something here. There we go. Okay, so that keeps that from rattling. This particular screw, these are the screws with the studs on the end of them, and I don't know how well that's showing up, but those drive in one way and the other. I'll just run this up. Yeah, that's the wrong size screwdriver, but I'm not putting a mammoth amount of torque on these things. We're just kissing off here. And it goes in there. Now we got that in. Now we're looking at this. This is the locking pin, and I swear this thing kicks everybody's butt because we get them in here a lot where this spring has just been destroyed. There's a spring in here. There's a little nubbin sticking up. Let's see if we can see it there. I'm not getting any detail. There it is. There's a little nubbin sticking up right there. And that's actually a spring-loaded detent that allows this thing to be stowed inside the pipe and then slid out, rotated, and slid back down inside the pipe. That's the operative idea. And it's going to do that sticking through this great big hole here. So we know that we're in the unwound position, and this is going to wind up going in this way. Now we're not going to put it in yet because we still got to put the magazine spring in, but I'm just showing you how it lines up. Here we go. That's going to line up that way. So then that's unlocked, and that is going to be locked. So just humor me here. Take that over there. But now comes the fun. Got to have one of these because we are about to make this magazine tube spring fit up inside the magazine and do it without kinking it or hurting ourselves. Magazine tube follower, that's always nice to have up inside. Now you get you a stick, and you take a stick and you put it all the way up through this. Oh, wrong way, I want to do it this way. Okay, you take a stick and you run it down the long axis of the spring. Now what that stick's going to do is that's going to allow us to compress this without it getting out of control here. And stick that down in there, and then we can just run this in, and now you see we have it under control and it's not jumping all over the place. So we can run this spring all the way up inside here, put this temporary assembly pin in, get down on that. Hold on a minute. Got a camera in my way here. And just stick that through there so that it doesn't explode. Drop this bad boy on here because we know that's where it's got to go. We can now pull that out. Line this up. Line up that way. Bang, we got it. Drop the assembly pin in. Now in the middle of all that, I dropped a screw on the floor and Bruno is retrieving it. The magic hands of the red-headed wonder. Now for those of you that are wondering, that little black speck there on that towel is going to disappear into an orange goo because Bruno has poison hands. Anyway, let's just take this screw here and stick it in there. It'll go in there. We got to get all this alignment right. There it is. I know you can't see through my hands. I'm trying really, really hard to deal with that. And then there's the other screw hole right there. Okay. And that goes. You got to just make some alignment here to get that screw to want to go down in there. Okay, there we go. Meanwhile, the spring's trying to push out on this, so there are a lot of alignment issues. So I'm unloading the magazine tube spring. So we know we got that right. Know that I've oiled all this before I put it back together again. I ran a little bit of oil up on the inside. We did all that. So then the last thing we got to do, this pin has a little spring-loaded gizmo sticking out right there. This was the inside conical shape of the plug. Like that. So when we insert this in, this will then hang on this piece of sheet metal. There's a void right here. So we'll just kick this through, stick it in there like that, push in on this detent and allow it to go. So now it's hanging on that right there. It's hanging, and then that can be kicked through and locked up to keep it from rotating. So that right there is the unlocked position, and this is the locked position. And when this is in a locked position, the two arrows will line up. I'm going to show that when we put the gun together. We'll show you the two arrows lined up. But for right now, we're going to kick this over. And if you pop that back through, then this can all be just carried as one unitized cassette. And that's the front end of the gun. So for a point of discussion, this is the slide bar. And when the gun is locked shut, that's touched right there and it keeps it shut. So if the gun is not locked shut, it's holding the trigger, and as the slide comes to the rear, that will come up and lock, and the hammer will fall. Now in this case, we've got steel on steel right here. These two are touching. Ordinarily, you do not want to release the energy of a hammer into the cassette. Newer guns, all AR-15s, never drop the hammer of an AR-15 unless there's an upper and a bolt carrier in there. You got about 3 times, and then it'll destroy the upper. Just take my word for it. All right, last thing I want to show you here. I had to go pick something up off the floor. Apologize for that. We have a spring here that sits down inside this. I know I'm a little bit off camera. Let me get up here. There's a little hole in here, and that grabs in. This goes around. Let me go ahead and cock this and get this out of the way. Now, why do I want to show you this so bad? The reason why I want to show you this is this little stud that goes down in here is left-handed threads. So this has to turn that way to go in. Just know that. This is another one that comes in here and just gets mauled. So there you go. There's the carrier assembly tied down with a left-handed stud. We've blown the oil out of this. Everything's right. We've got our action. This is the action lock disconnect right here. And then it also allows you to do the speed rock. We demonstrated all that. Okay, our next camera angle, we're going to put the barrel, we're going to put all this up in the vise, and oh man, I knocked the crap out of that camera, didn't I? Whack, 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 whack. Really cool. We'll see up in the vise here. All right, so I've got this barrel jigged in a vise so that it allows the it allows everything to move in and out. You can see the operating rod coming in and out here. You can see that if we push back on the magazine, it will stick out. We have interrupted threads. Whole 9 yards. All right. So there's a couple of things you got to do to put this gun together. We've adjusted the mechanism and timed the rings. I've done this so that when this drags up here, this is going to roll in and stop right where it's supposed to. The magazine tube, we're not going to do this yet, but the magazine tube, I want you to see this with the bolt out of the way. There's the magazine tube right there. So when it's all the way up, that'll be in, and that will be rotated to lock. But we're not going to do that yet because there's a couple of things you got to do first. All right. The bolt drops into this raceway. So now you have these two projections out here, these two ears, and there's a cut here. And this cut is what these projections have to go through. And I'm going to try to do this so that my fingers aren't in the way. But that's going to drop in, come through the cut, and then the rear end's going to fall down like that. And then you're going to bring the bolt shut and drop it. And you can see here that when the bolt drops down, it's now locked shut right there. So when this is pushed down, it's locked, and when it's up, it's unlocked. So just remember, that's how the gun locks up here. Let me do one last thing here. Okay, there we go. And it'll drop in. And that needs to be free to drop in. And when that drops in, you can actually see this interlock clearing. Okay? Now that interlock does something else. When the firing pin is down, let's say that this is, let's get that back up in there. There we go. Wow. Oop, a little bit crooked here. There we go. When this is down and the firing pin goes in, the important thing to note is that that interlock is actually pushing the firing pin back out, and it's ensuring that it comes out. So it's kind of like a return spring. So this is the ejector. Okay, and this sharp edge right here on the ejector is what catches the back end of the shell and spits it out. This sits in the gun in this configuration right here, and it's going up inside this recess. And I'm going to apologize because I've knocked my mic a couple of times doing this, and I'm trying to be a little bit better about that. So this little round lollipop right here, this round gizmo, goes inside of a round recess in here, and there is no way that I can show you how to put this in without getting my hands in front of it. So I'm going to do you one better. I'm grabbing it here in a pair of pliers, and I'm sticking it up inside. There's a slot in there that it goes in, but I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to show you how to take it out. So the only way to describe how to put this ejector in is to show you what it looks like when it comes out. And the way to get to that is to take a screwdriver and put it underneath this, and you'll see, let me hang on to it here so it doesn't pop out too quick. You'll see that it's sitting in a recess right there. See that? That recess, and that's what you're trying for. You're trying to get that to slip in. Now this is free to go up the slot right here behind the bolt. And the way to show that is this. Okay, you see the action bar coming and going, and there's a rocking mechanism in here that's going to grab the action bar. So when you put this gun together, the bolt's got to be down, and the only way I can do it is to reach in front of you. The bolt's got to be all the way down. The magazine tube has to be back, as far back as it'll go, and you can see this is up there. And then as you bring the action bar back, it will grab the slide, and it will pull it to the rear. Now once we've done that, we rotate the tube 90 degrees, so that arrow is there. That verifies that the magazine tube is rolled the right way and it's locked in. And there you go. Now you can see the back arrow coming around, lining up, kick it through, and it's locked. And now we have the bolt operating. All right, we're gonna reset this camera here because we're sitting out in the middle of nowhere doing this, and it's got the wiggly jigglies. Okay, this is the shell latch. The shell latch has a 12 written on it right there, which you can't see, and there's no way we're going to get it in this camera angle. But this shell latch has to go into a round hole here, and it's just a simple matter of sticking it in. And it's pretty obvious. You cannot put it in backwards, although I'm sure people have tried. So hang on a minute, let me get it in there. And then we can just see from afar that the shell latch is going to move up and down inside this mortise as the back end of the bolt goes by. And then we're going to drop in the fire control group. You just hang on to that for a second. Stick the fire control group in. And again, if you're having to push stuff or bang on stuff, you're doing something wrong. These guns go together fairly well. They're overbuilt. This thing's a tank, and that's why everybody likes them. Now they're heavy and they swing like a club. So I ran that screw down, that holds all that together. And we can see this annular socket here. And this annular socket is milled into the bottom of the fire control group and the gun. And then this tube has a bit of a taper to it. So this is going to wedge the wood out while that taper sucks it in. So as you draw down on the stock with this screw, and that's going to go ahead and draw it up on this taper, and it's going to squeeze it out here. And if the head of one of these things is screwed in properly, it's not going to go anywhere. And then when that's run down in here, then the only thing that's going to be left is to throw the butt plate up on it here and run some screws home. And we'll do all that. That's not going to photograph well. I will tell you that it's nice to have a supply of these gargantuan screwdrivers. So that you can get up inside the slot of this and then work all this from the end. And I like these square shank ones because you can get an all 16ths on the end of it. I like all 16ths crescent hammers because they work on English and metric fasteners. Let's face it, the real reason why you sat through this entire video was to have me run a Model 12. Well, it shoots, right? Well, there's a couple of features of a Model 12 that a lot of people kind of enjoy. And one of them would be, we can come up until the bolt is almost all the way shut, pull the trigger, and have the gun go off as soon as we shut it. And that's the speed rock feature. So, we can load. Something like that. I have never done that, and I'm going to tell you what, this barrel gets hot. Live shells came out of it, all kinds of weird stuff happened, but I guess with proper practice, you could employ this thing in that format. On the other hand, that's probably more rounds of 12 gauge than I've shot in about 3 months. Let's go back inside. At least it ain't pouring down rain this time. Factory AA's. I asked for ammo from inside the building and they bring me factory AA's to shoot a retest. Are you kidding me? Model 12, we've been down inside of it. We've investigated kind of how it works. And we've looked at certain facets of its operation. And the biggest one would be how to take it apart. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have been with you all today and work through a really nice gun. Oh, that's right, you gotta have the slide lock back. I'm learning stuff every day.